Tuesday morning, 10:45 a.m., Providence Municipal Court. The room hums with quiet tension, shuffling papers, the echo of footsteps, the soft buzz of TV cameras. Then the clerk calls a name that slices through the air. Alexis Monroe. She walks in like she owns the building. Tailored suit worth more than most people's cars. Leather briefcase, designer heels hitting the floor with sharp, impatient clicks. Her watch alone could pay every ticket in that courtroom twice. But it's not the money that freezes the room. It's the way she looks at everything and everyone, like this is all beneath her. In her mind, it's just a speeding ticket. 5 minutes, a small fine, back to her corner office. She has no idea that, in a few moments, one reckless gesture will shatter 20 years of reputation and make her a global example of what not to do in front of Judge Frank Caprio. Before we watch that line get crossed, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? And if you believe respect still matters, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Alexis steps up to the podium with the confident sway of someone who has never once feared consequences. She doesn't acknowledge the people watching her, the clerk waiting for her documents, or the officer who wrote the ticket. Her eyes go straight to Judge Frank Caprio sharp, assessing, already annoyed that she has to be here at all. Judge Caprio greets her with his trademark warmth. Good morning, Ms. Monroe. I see you're here for a speeding violation on I-95. Would you tell me what happened? Alexis exhales, slow and dramatic, as if the question itself is an inconvenience. Your Honor, she begins, her voice crisp and glacial. I was driving to a very important business meeting. The speed limit on that stretch is ridiculously low. Everyone goes 65, sometimes 70. I was simply flowing with traffic. Her tone doesn't explain it accuses, as if the law, the officer, and the entire system should apologize for interrupting her schedule. Judge Caprio glances at the report. Ms. Monroe, you were clocked at 68 in a 45. That's 23 miles over the limit. That's significant. Alexis crosses her arms. With respect, sir, that section was recently lowered from 55 to 45. It's a speed trap. Everyone knows that. A ripple passes through the courtroom, raised eyebrows, side glances, a few soft murmurs. Even the regulars who've seen everything instantly sense it. This woman is walking on thin ice, and she's the only one who doesn't know it. But Alexis continues, her posture stiffening with indignation. Frankly, Your Honor, the city has better things to do than set up traps to squeeze money out of drivers who are just trying to get to work. Judge Caprio's expression stays kind, but his voice gains weight. Ms. Monroe, whether you agree with the limit or not, it's clearly posted. Driving 23 miles over puts other drivers at risk. She lets out a sigh, loud, pointed, disrespectful, the kind you give a child who's deliberately being difficult. Your Honor, I've been driving 25 years, never had an accident. I'm a safer driver at 68 than most people are at 45. There it is, the belief that she is an exception to rules designed for everyone else. The prosecutor clears his throat. Your Honor, I should note that Ms. Monroe has 3 previous speeding violations in the last 5 years. 2 paid, 1 reduced with traffic school. Alexis snaps toward him. That's irrelevant to this case. Judge Caprio checks the file again. Actually, it's very relevant. It shows a pattern of ignoring speed limits. I do not ignore anything, Alexis fires back. I simply drive according to the capability of modern vehicles. These outdated limits don't reflect current safety standards. The air tightens. Even people who've never been to a courtroom can feel the tension turning sharp. She isn't just arguing, she's lecturing. Judge Caprio tries again, patient but firm. If you believe the limit is inappropriate, the solution is to petition City Council or the traffic authority, not to simply disregard it. She smirks. I don't have time to fight the city over every misguided regulation. The judge's next sentence slips out softly, but it cuts straight through the room. But you have time to come to traffic court repeatedly. There's no sarcasm, no bite, just a point so direct it cannot be ignored. but Alexis hears only insult. Her jaw tightens. The judge reviews the officer's notes. According to Officer Delgado, when he stopped you, you were argumentative and initially refused to provide your license. Is that accurate? Alexis lifts her chin. I asked why I was being stopped. That is my right. Absolutely, Caprio nods. But the report also states you told him he was wasting your time and that you had better things to do than deal with incompetent traffic enforcement. Alexis doesn't deny it. I was late for a meeting, Your Honor. A meeting that cost my company money because I was stuck on the shoulder while an officer lectured me. Ms. Monroe, Caprio says gently, you were late because you were speeding. The officer didn't make you do that. She rolls her eyes. The whole law is arbitrary. Now the patience visibly thins. No, the judge says, voice measured. The law is not arbitrary. It exists for safety. Believing you're above it because your meeting is important does not make it arbitrary. I never said I was above it. Your actions imply otherwise, Caprio replies. 4 violations in 5 years, disputing with the officer. Standing here now, suggesting limits don't apply to you because you're busy. Her cheeks flush deep red. Your Honor, I came here expecting justice, not a sermon. Justice, Caprio says calmly, is exactly what you're receiving. He announces the fine $385 plus mandatory safety school due to prior violations. Alexis's reaction is instant and visceral. Her fists clench. Her voice sharpens into a near shout. $385 for driving. This is absurd. I run a division at Montero Financial. I make decisions that affect hundreds of employees. And you're treating me like I'm some kind of criminal because I drove 68 on a highway. The room stiffens. People shift in their seats. A man in work boots shakes his head slowly. Judge Caprio stays unshaken. Ms. Monroe, your position does not exempt you from traffic laws. The person who came before you was a delivery driver, earning minimum wage. Alexis glares, full of heat and resentment. Her breathing grows short and angry. And then, as if something inside her snaps, maybe humiliation, maybe rage, maybe the unbearable thought of being treated like everyone else, she acts. Her right hand rises, slow, deliberate, controlled. She pauses, eyes locked on the judge, waiting, almost daring him to stop her. But he simply watches, unreadable. And that's all the permission her ego needs. She extends her middle finger. High, direct, unmistakable. A collective gasp detonates through the courtroom. Someone whispers, "She did not just do that." The bailiff steps forward in a heartbeat. The stenographer freezes. The cameras zoom in like predators sensing blood. Alexis holds the gesture for a second too long, long enough to confirm intent, long enough to erase doubt, long enough to destroy herself. And then she lowers her hand, realizing only too late that she has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Narrator's voice enters softly. Some mistakes cost money, some cost time. But a few, a rare few, cost the illusion that you were ever untouchable at all. The room is silent, waiting, not breathing, because everyone knows what comes next. And Alexis Monroe, woman who thought she had no time for ruleses, about to learn that Judge Frank Caprio has all the time in the world for respect. Alexis stands frozen for half a second after lowering her Hondas, if even her own brain can't fully process what she's just done. The courtroom, however, processes it instantly. The shock rolls through the benches like a wave. Even the people who were annoyed by her arrogance a moment ago now stare at her with wide eyes, jaws slack, because what she just did isn't merely rude. It's unthinkable. Judge Caprio doesn't react right away. And somehow, that makes the moment 1,000 times worse. He simply looks at her, studying her face the way a surgeon studies an X-ray before announcing the severity of the fracture. Alexis tries to recover, but she's not fast enough. She starts, voice unsteady. But the word stays suspended in the air, limp and powerless. The judge raises a single eyebrow. Ms. Monroe, did you just make an obscene gesture toward this court? His voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. The softness in it is far more threatening than anger would be. Alexis swallows. Her throat bobs visibly. Pride and panic wrestle behind her eyes. And for the first time since she walked into the courtroom, there is fear. Actual fear. I expressed my opinion about the process, she says stiffly. It's a terrible answer. Even she knows it the second the words escape. Judge Caprio repeats them slowly, as if she's handed him a fragile object to examine. You expressed your opinion by raising your middle finger in open court. The silence stretches, thick as concrete. Someone coughs. Someone else murmurs, "Wow," under their breath. The judge finally leans back slightly. And what disappears from his face is even more terrifying than what appears. The warmth that usually lights his expression, the compassion that has defined his decades on the bench vanishes. What replaces it is something colder, sharper, and infinitely more final. He stands. And when Judge Frank Caprio stands in that solemn room, you could hear a pin drop. "Bailiff," he says, not taking his eyes off Alexis, "approach." The bailiff steps forward so quickly it's clear he's seen this only a handful of times in his entire career. Alexis lifts her hands defensively. "Your Honor, wait, please." But it's far too late. The judge raises one hand, and she falls silent instantly. It's not magic. It's authority. Irrefutable, immovable authority. "Ms. Monroe," he says, "in my 35 years on this bench, I have dealt with people who were angry, frightened, confused, even overwhelmed. And to each of them, I offered patience, compassion, and dignity. Because that is the duty of this court." He takes a step toward her. Just one. But enough to make her shrink back a fraction. "But what you just did," his voice drops even lower. "What you did was not anger. It was contempt. Contempt for this court. Contempt for the law. Contempt for every citizen who walks through these doors and respects the process, whether they agree with it or not." Her lips tremble. It wasn't meant." "No," Caprio cuts in. "You will not interrupt me now." The courtroom reacts to those words like a spark hitting dry tinder. A hush falls, so complete it almost hums. He continues, voice steady and deliberate. "You insulted not just me. You insulted the institution. You insulted the very idea that justice is applied equally, regardless of status, wealth, or ego." Alexis blinks rapidly. The mascara that had been flawlessly applied that morning begins thinning at the corners of her eyes. "I made a gesture," she whispers, desperate. "Freedom of expression. Freedom of expression does not give you permission to disrupt or defy the dignity of a courtroom," Caprio replies. "Not here. Not ever." The judge turns his head slightly. "Bailiff, take Ms. Monroe into custody. She is to be held on contempt of court." The words hit the room like a gavel strike, even before the actual gavel sounds. "What? No, no, no. You can't." Alexis stumbles backward as the bailiff steps toward her. "This is insane. I have a job board. Meetings reports Judge Caprio remains unmoved. You should have considered that before raising your middle finger at this court." Ms. Monroe. Two officers flank her now. When one reaches gently for her arm, she flinches like she's been electrocuted. "Your Honor, please," she pleads, voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't think I wasn't trying to." The judge holds up a hand. The time for apologies was before the gesture, Ms. Monroe. Her breath becomes shallow, ragged. Her entire persona, the confident executive, the woman whose presence filled the room minutes ago, crumbles like it was made of paper. "Please," she whispers, "I can't go to jail." Judge Caprio nods slightly, acknowledging the fear in her voice, but not yielding to it. "The penalty for contempt is 30 days in the Providence County Jail. You may have that reduced to 10 if, and only if you demonstrate genuine remorse and understanding of why your behavior is unacceptable." Alexis covers her mouth with her hand as a sob breaks free. "Understand now. I do. I swear I do." "Do you?" Caprio asks quietly. Not accusatory, just deeply, profoundly sad. She can't answer. Not convincingly. Her tears drown whatever words she tries to form. Then, the judge adds something no one expects. "Ms. Monroe, during your first 72 hours in custody, you will write a complete, honest reflection explaining why respect for the court matters, not just in your case, but in society. You will explain your actions, what you've learned, and how you intend to change. If that reflection shows true understanding rather than excuses, I will review your sentence." Alexis nods frantically. "Tori, I'll do it. I promise." "Just please, don't send me away." But the officers already have her arms. They're gentle, almost sympathetic, but firm. She looks around wildly, searching for someone, anyone, to intervene. But the courtroom gives her nothing. No lifeline. Not a single sympathetic glance. Because everyone saw the gesture, everyone heard her words. Everyone witnessed the arrogance explode into contempt. Narrator steps in softly. "Privilege can protect you from many things, late fees, long lines, inconvenient truths. But it cannot protect you from yourself. And it cannot protect you from the consequences of disrespect in a place where respect is the only currency that matters." The officers guide her toward the side door. Her heels click unevenly. The confident rhythm replaced by shaky, stumbling steps. Just before she disappears behind the heavy wooden door, she turns her head, eyes red, cheeks streaked with mascara, and whispers one last time, "Please, Your Honor, I'm sorry." But the door closes, and the courtroom exhales. Judge Caprio finally sits again, but he doesn't immediately move on. He takes a breath, sets his hands on the bench, and speaks not to the clerk, not to the attorneys, but to the people both in the room and watching through the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says slowly, "what you witnessed today is not something I ever take lightly. Contempt of court is not about hurt feelings. It is about preserving the integrity of this institution. If we allow disrespect to go unanswered, we erode the rule of law itself." The camera pans across the audience. Shock, agreement, contemplation. Caprio continues, voice steady. "We resolve disputes here with civility, not with force, not with anger, and certainly not with gestures meant to degrade the process." The courtroom nods in near unison. Alexis Monroe is absent from the room, but her presence lingers like a warning sharp, unforgettable. And as Judge Frank Caprio brings down his gavel to close the session, the message is clear, resounding, unavoidable. Some lines exist for a reason, and when you cross them, the consequences are very, very real. The metal door slams behind Alexis with a hollow echo that seems to swallow the last of her confidence. The hallway beyond the courtroom is colder, narrower, and far less forgiving than anything she's ever walked through. The officers don't shove her, they don't need to. The shock alone moves her feet forward like she's drifting in someone else's nightmare. Her heels clatter unevenly against the linoleum. Every few steps she stumbles. The officers remain patient, but they don't offer comfort. Their silence is a mirror. It shows her exactly who she is right now. Someone who crossed a line so hard and so publicly that even the people paid to escort her won't make small talk. They reach a small processing room. The fluorescent lights are unforgiving, slicing across her face and revealing blotches of red from crying, streaks of mascara, and the faint trembling of her lips. "Please," she says again, barely audible. "I'm not a criminal." One of the officers looks at her not cruelly but honestly. "Ma'am, everyone who comes through here says that." The words hit her like a slap. She swallows hard. She isn't special here. She isn't Vice President Monroe. She's just another person who made a choice and is now facing the consequences. They take her belongings, the briefcase, the watch, the jewelry, the heels. Each item is logged, tagged, sealed. watching her possessions disappear into plastic bags feels like pieces of her old identity being put in storage. "Remove the jacket," the female officer instructs. Alexis hesitates. Her suit cost more than some people's monthly rent, but eventually she unbuttons it with shaky hands. The officer doesn't care. The fabric disappears into another evidence bag. "Please face the wall." A pat-down. Clinical. Unceremonious. Not degrading in the way she feared, just routine. And maybe that's worse. She isn't important enough to degrade. She's just processed. Then comes the moment she dreads most. The mugshot. A plain gray backdrop. A buzzing camera. She stands there, shoulders hunched, mascara smeared, eyes swollen. The click of the shutter is soft, but it feels like a thunderclap. That image will live forever. Online. In databases. In the memory of anyone who watched the news that night. The woman who flipped off a judge. After fingerprints and paperwork, Alexis is handed a folded pile of jail-issued clothing. Worn, stiff, faded orange. "You can change in there," the officer says, pointing to a stall. Alexis steps inside. The door shuts. She stares at the jumpsuit in her hands. Her fingers don't want to move. She thinks of her walk-in closet at home. Hundreds of outfits arranged by season, color, and designer. Everything curated. Everything expensive. Everything a symbol of a life organized and controlled. This jumpsuit is none of those things. It smells faintly of disinfectant. It's rough against her skin. It fits her like it wasn't made for a person, just made to contain one. When she steps out, every piece of the executive she was has been stripped away. They lead her through another hallway into a holding area. Several women already sit on the metal benches, young, old, tired, annoyed, detached. A mother with hollow eyes, a teenager with bruised knuckles, a woman in hospital scrubs. All of them glance up when Alexis enters. Not with sympathy, not with curiosity, just with the standard silent assessment that incarcerated people give each other. "Who are you? What did you do? How long will you be here?" Alexis lowers herself onto a bench, moving stiffly. She tries not to make eye contact. She clutches her arms, as though she could shrink herself small enough to go unnoticed. For several minutes, no one speaks. It might as well be hours. Then the woman next to Hera, middle-aged figure with deep worry lines, tilts her head. "What you in for?" Alexis hesitates. What is she supposed to say? Speeding, contempt, flipping off a judge on live TV. "I made a mistake," she whispers. The woman snorts. "We all did, honey. Which one's yours?" Alexis stares down at her hands, ashamed. Contempt of court. The women around her go still. Even they know that's different. Not worse, necessarily, but bold, reckless, stupid in a special way. A girl across from her lets out a low whistle. "Damn. You really pissed somebody off, huh?" Alexis's eyes sting again. "I didn't mean to." "Sure you didn't," the older woman says. Not unkindly, just disbelieving. "Nobody ever means to until the cuffs come out." The teenager laughs bitterly. "You flipped the judge off or something?" The silence that follows is answer enough. The group erupts in laughter, not mocking, not cruel, just incredulous. "Oh, girl," one says, wiping her eyes. "You are wild. Even I wouldn't do that." "And I've done some stupid things." Alexis flushes deep crimson. Shame crawls up her throat. Here she is, the woman who manages multi-million-dollar portfolios, being laughed at by complete strangers in orange jumpsuits. And she can't even blame them. She would laugh too, if she wasn't the main character in this disaster. A buzzer announces the next phase. One by one, they're led in groups toward the cell block. Alexis is placed in a two-person cell with a single metal toilet, a small sink, and 2 bunk beds. Her cellmate, a woman named Marjorie, sits on the lower bunk, reading a paperback. Her hair is graying, her demeanor calm and watchful. Marjorie looks her up and down with a kind of seasoned understanding. First time. Alexis nods. Contempt case. Another nod. Marjorie whistles softly. Must have been one hell of a day. Alexis sits on the top bunk. The mattress is thin and slightly lumpy. She grips the edges like the room might spin. "I didn't think," she whispers. "I didn't think it would go this far." Marjorie closes her book and studies her. "People like you usually don't. People like me, rich, stressed, thinking the world runs on your schedule." Alexis opens her mouth to defend herself, but there is no defense. Not anymore. Not after everything she did today. Marjorie softens. "Look, kid, you're scared. That's normal. But you got a chance." "A chance?" Marjorie nods. "Judge gave you 72 hours to write that statement, right?" Alexis gasps. "How did you—" "The whole facility knows. Word travels. Fast." She leans forward, lowering her voice. "You better make that statement count. And don't write it like you're talking to your board of directors. He'll see right through that." Alexis sinks deeper into the mattress. "I don't even know where to start." Marjorie taps her temple. "Start with the truth. The real truth. Not the one you tell other people. The one you tell yourself at 3 a.m. when nobody's watching." Alexis doesn't sleep that night. She lies awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every arrogant word she said, every cold glance, every justification she hid behind. She sees the officer's face when she insulted him, the courtroom's stunned reaction, Judge Caprio's disappointment, worse than anger. At some point, she sits up, pulls the blank notebook they gave her closer, and opens to the first page. Her hand trembles as she writes the first sentence. "I thought I was better than the rules." The words look awful, raw, true. She stares at them for a long time before her pen moves again. She writes about her past speeding tickets, her entitlement, the way she treated people she thought were beneath her. She writes about how the jail intake felt like being peeled open layer by layer. She writes about fear, about shame, about realization. And beneath all of it, she writes something she has never admitted out loud. "I believed consequences were for other people." Hours pass, pages fill, tears drip onto the paper. By the time she finishes, dawn light spills into the cell through the narrow window. She feels hollowed out, but lighter in a way she doesn't understand yet. A part of her old self died last night. Maybe that's the point. She closes the notebook and whispers to the empty room, "Judge Caprio, I hope this is enough." She doesn't know it yet, but the real test, the one that will determine her fate, hasn't even begun. The second morning inside the Providence County facility is quieter than the first, not because the jail is any less harsh, but because Alexis Monroe has stopped fighting it. The metal doors still slam. The fluorescent lights still buzz with that low, maddening hum. Voices still echo down concrete hallways. But something inside her has changed. Last night's writing session numbed her. It stripped her. It forced her into a kind of honesty she never allowed herself before. She sits on her bunk now, knees pulled up to her chest, notebook resting beside her. The pages are filled, some neat, some messy, some smeared with tears, but filled. It isn't polished. It isn't professional. It isn't executive. It's real. And terrifyingly vulnerable. Her cellmate, Marjorie, peers up from the bottom bunk. "You finish your confession." "It's not a confession," Alexis says softly. "It's an explanation." Then she sighs. "Maybe it is a confession." Marjorie smirks. "Honey, if you wrote it right, it's both." Alexis rubs her temples. "I don't know how he's going to read it." "He's been doing this longer than you've been in business," Marjorie says. "Trust me, he'll know whether you mean it." Alexis looks down at her hands. Her nails are chipped. Her fingers shake slightly. She used to get manicures twice a week. Now she barely recognizes them. "I don't know if I mean it," she murmurs. Marjorie closes her book and stands. "Sure you do. You're just scared to admit it." Before Alexis can respond, an officer appears at the door. Monroe. Roll up. Her heart drops straight into her stomach. So soon. Already. "You've got a review hearing," the officer says. "Caprio wants you back in court." Alexis almost forgets how to breathe. Her whole body shivers. She thought she had more time, one more night to rehearse, to rewrite, to prepare. But maybe that's the point. Judge Caprio doesn't want rehearsed. He wants truth. The officer unlocks the door. As Alexis steps out, Marjorie calls after her. "Hey!" Alexis turns. "When he asks you why respect matters," Marjorie says, tapping her chest, "answer from here. Not from your head, and definitely not from your damn resume." Alexis nods slowly. "Thank you." "Go show him you learned something," Marjorie replies, "or you'll be back here warming that bunk for 30 days. The walk back to the courtroom feels different from the walk to jail. That walk was all panic, disbelief, and denial. This one is heavy, measured, like each step is part of something she can't undo, but maybe, just maybe, can learn from. When they bring her into the back hallway near the courtroom, she sees her reflection in a glass partition. She doesn't look wealthy. She doesn't look powerful. She looks human, raw, bruised by her own arrogance. The officer opens the door, and she steps inside. The courtroom is full. Fuller than before. Word spread. The case everyone whispered about, the executive who flipped off Caprio, drew a crowd. She sees reporters. She sees retirees. She sees young people who probably never thought they'd set foot in a courtroom willingly. And she sees Judge Frank Caprio, already seated, hands folded on the bench. His expression unreadable. Not angry, not warm, not disappointed. Just waiting. They bring Alexis to the podium. Her orange jumpsuit feels far heavier than the suit she wore days earlier. The material scratches her skin. The air feels cooler. Her throat tightens. "Ms. Monroe," Judge Caprio says, "do you have something you wish to present to the court?" Alexis forces her trembling hands to lift the notebook. "Yes, Your Honor. I wrote what you asked. I wrote about why I did what I did, and why I was wrong." "Very well," Caprio replies. "You may read it." But Alexis hesitates. Reading it aloud means exposing herself to everyone in the room, not just him. Her shame, her ego, her flaws. She glances around. People stare back with curiosity, judgment, anticipation. Her pulse races. Her mouth dries. Then she hears Marjorie's voice echoing in her mind. "From here, not from your resume." She draws a breath, a real deep, steadying breath, and she begins. "Your Honor, when I walked into this courtroom the first time, I didn't come as a citizen. I came as someone who believed she was too important to be here. I came in thinking my job, my title, and my schedule mattered more than the laws I violated. I didn't respect the officer. I didn't respect the process. And I didn't respect you." A ripple moves through the courtroom. No one laughs. No one scoffs. Everyone listens. I told myself it was just a speeding ticket. Just a small mistake. But it wasn't. It was part of a pattern I refused to see. I had 3 past violations. I argued with every officer. I dismissed every rule that inconvenienced me, because deep down, I believed consequences were for other people. Her voice breaks. She continues anyway. "When I flipped you off, Your Honor, it wasn't a gesture. It was who I believed I was. Someone untouchable. Someone above correction." The words hang in the air like a confession in church. I spent the last 72 hours in a jail cell, being processed, fingerprinted, stripped of every symbol I used to define myself. I met women who made mistakes but never disrespected the court. Women who were terrified of you not because of who you are, but because they understood what the court represents. I didn't understand that, and that shame, that realization has been heavier than the bars, heavier than the jumpsuit, heavier than the sentence itself. She closes her eyes briefly. "Respect matters, Your Honor, because without it, the law means nothing. If I can choose which rules apply to me, then anyone can. And then nothing is fair. Nothing is safe. Nothing is just. I was wrong, and I am sorry." A long, trembling silence. Even the cameras seem to hold their breath. When Alexis lowers the notebook, her hands are shaking violently. She feels exposed, like she just peeled her skin off, in front of strangers. Judge Caprio doesn't speak right away. He lets the silence do the talking. It stretches for several seconds that feel like years. Then Ms. Monroe, he begins softly, "Thank you for your honesty." His tone is softer than she expected. Not forgiving, not condemning. Measured. "I've read many statements over my years on the bench," he continues. "Some truthful, some not. Some written to avoid punishment, others written to seek redemption." Alexis swallows hard. "I believe," he says slowly, "that what you wrote came from a place of genuine reflection." A faint, stunned gasp escapes her. Not relief, he's too afraid for relief. Just disbelief that he didn't dismiss her entirely. "But," Caprio adds, leaning forward, "I want to understand something directly from you, not from the page." Her chest tightens. "When you told the officer he was wasting your time, what were you thinking?" Her voice is barely more than a whisper. "I thought, my job made me more important. And now, I think being a citizen makes us equal," she says, "or at least it should." Caprio nods. "Why does this matter?" "Because if I believe I'm above the law, then I'm placing myself above everyone who follows it," she answers. "And that destroys the idea of fairness." Her voice cracks again. "But the truth, Your Honor, I wasn't just breaking fairness. I was breaking myself." A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Not judgment, something closer to empathy. Even the prosecutor leans back, arms crossed, thoughtful. Judge Caprio sits silently for a long moment, absorbing her words. Then he speaks. Quiet, steady, weighty. "Ms. Monroe, I believe you have begun to understand the lesson this court intended to teach." Her knees weaken. She grips the podium. "But the question remains," Caprio says. "How will you prove that this understanding is more than temporary fear?" Tears slip down her cheeks. "I'll do whatever is required of me, not to escape punishment, but to earn the second chance you're offering." The judge nods again slowly. The courtroom waits, suspended between breath and judgment. And Alexis waits with them, heart pounding, knowing that the next words out of Judge Frank Caprio's mouth may shape not only the next 30 days, but the rest of her life. The courtroom holds its breath. Even the hum of the overhead lights seems to dim as Judge Frank Caprio studies Alexis Monroe's trembling form. Her statement, raw, unpolished, painfully honest, still lingers in the air, filling the room with a quiet weight no one dares disturb. He rests his hands on the bench, fingertips touching, eyes on her. "Ms. Monroe," he begins, "there's something I've learned in all my years in this seat. Regret is easy, fear is easy, but understanding is rare." Alexis's pulse pounds in her ears. She doesn't know whether he's preparing to lower a hammer or extend a lifeline. "I need to know," Judge Caprio continues, "what specifically changed for you in the last 72 hours? Not broadly, not philosophically. What moment made you realize that respect isn't optional?" Alexis swallows. Her voice comes out thin and fragile. "It wasn't one moment, Your Honor. It was all of it." "Explain." She closes her eyes briefly, gathering herself. The room waits. "When they took my belongings," she says, "I realized how much of my identity I'd tied to things. My watch, my clothes, my title. I thought those things made me someone. Losing them felt like losing myself." The judge nods, but doesn't interrupt. Then she continues. "When I sat with the other women, I realized none of them had ever forgotten their respect for the court. They were scared, but respectful. Even the ones who'd made bigger mistakes than mine. They understood something I didn't." "And what was that?" "That the courtroom doesn't revolve around us," she whispers. "It's bigger than any one person. Even me." A hush settles deeper. "And the cell," Alexis says, voice cracking. "The metal bed. The silence at night. The fact that no one cared who I was in the outside world. I wasn't a VP. I wasn't special. I was just another inmate who chose pride over decency. It forced me to see that my attitude wasn't confidence. It was arrogance disguised as competence. The judge's gaze softens, not forgiving, but recognizing the truth in what she says. And when I wrote the reflection, she adds, I had to face the fact that I believed consequences didn't apply to me. That's not just disrespectful, it's dangerous. And now, she says, chest rising and falling, I understand that respect isn't something the court demands. It's something the court deserves. Automatically. No matter who you are, or how much you make, or what meetings you think are more important. A faint murmur of agreement ripples through the gallery. Judge Caprio leans back slightly. You say you understand the importance of respect. But tell me, what do you believe the courtroom represents? Alexis answers without hesitation, almost surprising herself. Fairness. Order. Accountability. A place where we're equals, even when our lives are unequal. And why does that matter? Because without it, Alexis whispers, the world becomes chaos. The strong take advantage of the weak. The privileged pretend laws don't apply to them. And people like me start believing we can flip off a judge and walk away like nothing happened. The words land like stones in the silence. Judge Caprio sits motionless. Then he nods, once slowly, deliberately, like a man who's just heard what he needed to hear. He turns to the prosecutor. Counsel, do you have any comments before sentencing? The prosecutor stands. He's not unkind, just firm. Your Honor, the severity of her gesture cannot be understated. It was witnessed by nearly 40 people in this room, and the disrespect was clear, deliberate, and entirely avoidable. Alexis flinches. However, he continues, I have also read Ms. Monroe's statement. It is unusually sincere. Most defendants write excuses. She wrote accountability. I believe she understands the gravity of what she did. Whether that merits leniency is up to the court. He sits. The judge folds his hands. Ms. Monroe, before I deliver my decision, I want to give you the opportunity to say anything else you feel you must say. Alexis hesitates. Her throat tightens. She looks down, then up, directly into the eyes of the man she insulted. Your Honor, I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for a chance to prove that what I learned in these 72 hours won't fade once I'm out of Orange. I can't undo what I did. I can't erase the gesture. I can't erase the arrogance. But I can promise you it will not define the rest of my life. A tear rolls down her cheek. And if you give me a path to earn back dignity, not just avoid jail, I will follow it. Honestly. The judge exhales slowly. The moment has arrived. Ms. Monroe, he begins, contempt of court is a serious offense. It strikes at the foundation of the justice system. If left unaddressed, it sends a dangerous message that disrespect is tolerated and that the authority of the court can be mocked. A beat. You gave this court the middle finger. You were arrogant. You were dismissive. You believed your time was more valuable than the law. Alexis winces, but the room freezes. You also did something many do not. You reflected. You examined yourself honestly. You acknowledged the truth that your actions came not from frustration, but from entitlement. Alexis's breath catches. That honesty, Caprio says, is the first step toward restoration. He pauses, letting the room feel the weight of his words. I am sentencing you to 30 days in the Providence County Jail for contempt of court. Gasps erupt. Alexis's vision blurs. But, Caprio continues, raising a hand, I am suspending 23 of those days. The room falls silent again. You have already served 3. You will serve 7 more only if you fail to comply with the following conditions. Alexis's heart pounds. Conditions. There's hope. First, Caprio says, you will complete 80 hours of community service, speaking at schools and civic programs about respect for the court, respect for the law, and the dangers of believing oneself above it. A murmur of approval. Second, your driver's license is suspended for 90 days, effective immediately. Alexis nods, accepting it without question. Third, he continues, you will pay a fine of $5,000, not because you can afford it, but because it reflects the seriousness of your actions. She nods again, eyes wet. And finally he says, you will continue the personal reflection you started. For the next 60 days, you will write a weekly journal entry about how you understand respect, humility, and accountability. These entries will be submitted to the court. Some people in the gallery smile. It's not just punishment, it's transformation. If you complete all of these conditions, Caprio concludes, the remaining days of your sentence will be dismissed. If you fail any of them, you will serve the full 30 days. He looks at her directly. Ms. Monroe, this is your second chance. Do not waste it. Alexis's knees nearly give out. She grips the podium, sobbing, but not with fear. With relief, with gratitude, with a strange new understanding of justice. Thank you, Your Honor, she whispers. You won't regret this. I promise. Her voice breaks again. I will earn this. And for the first time since she entered the courtroom days earlier, Judge Caprio allows the faintest hint of warmth to return to his expression. I hope you do, he says gently. The gavel falls. Alexis Monroe doesn't walk out of the courtroom redeemed, but she walks out with something she never had before. A reason to be, a reason to change, and a responsibility to prove that respect isn't something she lost. It's something she'll spend the rest of her life learning to give. The courtroom empties slowly after the gavel falls, but Alexis remains where she is for a few seconds longer, gripping the podium as though it's the only solid thing in her world. 5 days ago. She walked into this room believing she was untouchable. Today, she stands here stripped of every illusion she had about herself. A deputy approaches her gently. Ma'am, this way. She nods, trembling, and follows him through the side door. She's not being taken back to a cell this time, only to a transitional waiting area to process her release. But the short walk feels like the longest of her life. Every step echoes with the memory of her own arrogance. In the holding room, she sits alone on a bench. The orange jumpsuit hangs loosely on her frame. She tugs the sleeves nervously, as if that could somehow hide the evidence of where she's been. While she waits, she hears distant murmurs through the walls, as people in the main courtroom still talking about her case. She really flipped off the judge. Unbelievable. At least she owned up to it. Caprio handled that perfectly. Each voice stings, but none as sharply as her own memory of raising that finger-slow, deliberate, poisoned with entitlement. Ms. Monroe, a voice calls from the doorway. She turns. It's the prison transport officer who checked her in 3 days earlier, the same woman who took her belongings, watched her crumble, and escorted her into a cell. You're being released pending conditions, the officer says. Congratulations. Alexis doesn't feel congratulated. She feels humbled, not crushed, not broken, just aware of how fragile she truly is beneath all the armor she spent years building. Thank you, she replies quietly. The officer hands her the clear bag containing her belongings. The Rolex, the designer heels, the tailored jacket, all the symbols she once believed defined her. She stares at the bag without reaching for it. You okay? The officer asks. Alexis gives a weak nod, just thinking. About what? She tries to smile, but it comes out sad. About how expensive respect is when you waste it. The officer lets out a low chuckle, not mocking, but real. That's the truest thing I've heard all week. A moment passes. Then, get changed. You'll be escorted to reception once you're ready. Alexis enters the changing stall and slips back into her tailored suit, but something about it feels different, uncomfortable, artificial, like clothing made for a person she no longer is. She stares at herself in the mirror, The suit fits. The image doesn't. When she exits the stall, the officer takes the jumpsuit and nods toward the hallway. Alexis follows her into a brighter reception area where a volunteer sits at a desk with a clipboard. The volunteer is a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair and soft eyes. Ms. Monroe, I'm here to review your conditions and help you begin the re-entry process. Re-entry, Alexis repeats quietly. That's what this is, isn't it? The woman nods warmly. It's not about where you were. It's about where you're going. They sit. The woman opens a folder. Your first responsibility is to report to the community outreach coordinator within 72 hours. He'll schedule your speaking engagements. Alexis swallows. Speaking engagements? You'll be addressing high school and college students, the woman explains, talking about accountability, respect for the law, your experience with contempt of court. The words sting. Her mistake will now follow her into classrooms, auditoriums, community centers. What if they don't take me seriously? The woman gives her a look so sincere it nearly brings Alexis to tears. You'd be surprised how much people listen when someone tells the truth about who they used to be. Next, the woman reviews the fine. $5,000. It should feel like a sting, but Alexis almost feels grateful that money is the least of her problems. Your driver's license is suspended for 90 days, the woman continues. During that time, you must arrange transportation legally. No exceptions. Alexis nods. Of course. And lastly, the woman taps the folder. Your weekly reflection journals. The judge will review them personally. Hearing that tightens something in Alexis's chest. Her words, her growth, her failures. All of it will be seen by the one person she disrespected more deeply than anyone else. I understand, she says. Do you have any questions? The volunteer asks. Just one burns in her mind. How do I fix myself? But she can't ask that. Not yet. Instead, she asks, when do I start? The woman smiles. You already have. A few minutes later, Alexis steps outside into the crisp daylight. For a moment, she stands perfectly still, overwhelmed by the strange freedom of open air. The sky looks bigger than she remembers. The breeze feels unfamiliar. Everything feels different. She spots a bench near the parking lot and sits. Her phone returned with her belongings, buzzes with dozens of notifications, missed calls from coworkers, texts from board members, media alerts, email subject lines in all caps. Her stomach twists. Everyone knows. The story's out there. Her mugshot is probably circulating with headlines she doesn't want to imagine. She locks the phone without reading a single message. Whatever storm waits for her out there, emails, gossip, judgment, it can wait. For now, she just sits and breathes. After a few minutes, she notices someone approaching from across the lot. It's an older man wearing a faded navy jacket and a veteran's cap. He carries himself with quiet confidence and the kind of weathered dignity that comes from decades of real experience, not corporate titles or six-figure salaries. He walks toward her bench and nods politely. Mind if I sit? She shakes her head. It's a free bench. He chuckles lightly and eases himself down beside her. You were the one in Caprio's courtroom this morning, he says, not accusingly, but with simple acknowledgement. Alexis lowers her gaze. Yes. That was me. The man studies her for a long moment. My name's Thomas, he says. Thomas Reed. She nods. Alexis. I saw what happened in there, Thomas says gently. People won't forget it. But that doesn't mean they won't forgive it. Her eyes sting again. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. Thomas scratches his chin thoughtfully. Deserving has nothing to do with it. What matters is owning your mistake and trying to be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. Alexis lets that settle. A simple truth, a hard truth. You know, Thomas adds, I was in a military court once. Young kid, full of myself, thought I knew everything. Judge chewed me out for disrespect. Wasn't pretty. Alexis looks up, surprised. What happened? I learned, he says plainly, the hard way. But I learned. He studies her again, eyes warm but searching. You will too. For the first time since she left the courtroom, Alexis feels the faintest spark of belief. Maybe he's right. Maybe she can rebuild from this. Thank you, she whispers. Thomas pats her shoulder gently, then stands. You take care of yourself, Ms. Monroe. And remember, respect isn't something you give because someone demands it. You give it because you're better when you do. He walks away, and Alexis sits for a long time after replaying his words. Eventually she stands, smoothing her wrinkled suit, takes one final breath, and walks toward the street to call a cab. No car, no assistant, no shortcuts. Just a woman who made a mistake and now has the responsibility to become someone who won't make it again. The real sentence has begun. Not the jail time. Not the fine. Not the suspension. The sentence of becoming a different person. A person shaped not by pride but by humility, accountability, and hard-earned wisdom. And for the first time, Alexis is ready to serve it. The next morning begins with something Alexis Monroe hasn't felt in years. Quiet. Not the quiet of a corner office at 6 a.m., or the quiet of a chauffeured car gliding through city streets. This is the quiet that follows humiliation, introspection, and the strange calm that comes after the storm has already torn through your life. She wakes in her apartment still exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the past few days. Her bed feels different, too soft, too indulgent after the steel frame in the jail. She sits up slowly, running her hands over her face, remembering every detail of Judge Caprio's sentencing, the suspended days, the community service, the journal entries, the fine, the license suspension. A lesser person might already be planning an appeal, but she isn't that person anymore. Not after everything she's seen, not after everything she's been forced to confront. When she enters her kitchen, her phone buzzes violently with notifications, emails, texts, media mentions. She ignores them. The world can wait. Right now, she has a list of responsibilities from a judge who, oddly enough, believes she's capable of change. She pours herself a glass of water, then sits at the small dining table and opens her notebook, the same one she filled in that jail cell. Her pen hovers over the first blank page for her weekly reflection. But she doesn't write yet. She just breathes. After a few minutes, she finally checks her messages. As expected, there are reactions from every direction. From her assistant. The board wants an emergency meeting. Call ASAP. From her boss. We need to discuss the media situation. Don't go online. From coworkers. Are you okay? Is it true? Call me. From her ex-husband. What did you do? From the media alerts. Executive arrested for contempt after flipping off Judge Caprio video spreads nationwide in hours. Public debate, privilege, justice, and respect. Alexis stops reading. A wave of nausea rolls through her. Her name is out there now, attached to the worst moment of her life. She closes the phone and presses her palms into her eyes. She wants to disappear, but disappearing is not an option. Not with 77 hours of community work ahead. Not with a judge expecting weekly entries that reflect real growth. Not with young people expecting her to speak honestly about humility. She stands, takes a breath, and does something she's always avoided. She calls her parents. Her mother answers on the second ring. Alexis. Oh my God, we've been worried sick. Alexis braces herself. Mom, too want to explain. But her mother cuts her off gently. You don't need to explain. We saw the clip. We saw the court follow-up. We're not proud of what happened, honey, but we're proud of how you handled the aftermath. Alexis freezes. You are. Yes, her mother says. You owned it. Most people in your position would lawyer up and claim unfair treatment. You chose accountability. That means something. Alexis chokes up. Mom, I messed up so badly. You did, her mother says, without softening it. But the only thing that matters now is what you do with it. Alexis whispers, I'm scared. her mother responds. Then you're finally learning. They talk a little longer about the sentence, the public reaction, the fear of what comes next. But her mother keeps repeating one thing. This isn't the end of your life. It's the end of who you were. After the call, Alexis feels steadier. Uncertain, yes, but grounded in a way she hasn't felt in years. By noon, she forces herself to face the outside world. She calls a rideshare, her license suspension already in effect, and heads to the Providence Community Engagement Center. The building is modest. No glass walls, no marble floors, no assistants scurrying around. Just a reception desk, a few posters about civic responsibility, and the unmistakable smell of government coffee. A friendly woman at the front desk greets her. You must be Ms. Monroe. Judge Caprio's case. Alexis winces. Yes, that's me. Don't worry, the woman says kindly. We've had much worse. She hands Alexis a folder. Inside are schedules, contact information, and guidelines for her community service. You'll be giving talks at local schools, youth centers, and sometimes community meetings. Don't worry, we'll help you prepare. Alexis flips through the papers. Her first engagement is in 3 days. A high school. A senior civics class. The irony hits her hard. A woman who once disrespected the system now teaching teenagers about respecting it. The coordinator, a gray-bearded man named Richard, steps out of his office. Ms. Monroe. Come in. His office is cluttered with binders, coffee mugs, and crumpled sticky notes. No luxury, no Decker-just work. He gestures for her to sit. I read your case notes, Richard begins, and I watch the footage. Alexis's stomach twists. But I also read your reflection, he says, surprising her. Judge Caprio forwarded it. Said you were worth investing time into. Alexis blinks. He said that. Richard nods. He doesn't waste those words. Ever. For a moment, the world steadies around her. So, Richard continues, let's talk about your talks. Students don't respond to lectures. They respond to honesty, vulnerability, real consequences. Think you can offer that? Alexis nods, though fear tightens her chest. Yes, I think I can. Good. Because they don't need another lesson about speeding laws. They need to understand why respect matters. Why ego is dangerous. Why humility saves you. Alexis swallows. I wish someone had told me that 20 years ago. Richard smiles. Then maybe it's your job to tell them now. She leaves the center with a stack of materials, a list of assignments, and a strange sense of direction. Not comfort, not yet, but direction. When she returns home, she sits at her desk and opens her notebook again. The blank page stares at her. She starts writing her first weekly reflection, Week 1, Why Respect Matters. She writes about Marjorie, about the intake process, about the moment she heard the metal cell door shut behind her, about the cruelty of her own assumptions, about the weight of being treated like everyone else, and realizing how foreign that feeling was to her. At one point she pauses, gripping her pen tightly, overwhelmed by the realization that she has spent most of her adult life performing competence instead of living integrity. She writes that too. By the time she finishes, the sun has set. Her hand aches, her eyes are puffy. But the entry is real. She closes the notebook and whispers into the quiet. I will not waste this chance. Her phone dings, not a call, not an email, a news notification. Community reacts to Judge Caprio's contempt sentencing, fair or too harsh. Executive's emotional statement sparks national conversation on privilege. Who is Alexis Monroe? Everything we know. She turns off the phone again. The world may be watching, but she's not living for the world anymore. She's living for the version of herself who sat in that cell stripped of everything and realized she didn't like the woman she had become. The next morning, she rises early and heads to the community center again for training. On the way, she passes by the courthouse. People are gathered outside, some leaving hearings, some waiting for their names to be called, some just watching. For a moment, she stops across the street and looks up at the building. The stone columns, the wooden doors, the place where she made the worst mistake of her life, and where she received the chance to rebuild it. She whispers, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular. Then she turns and continues walking. It will take time. It will take work. It will take humility. But for the first time in years, Alexis Monroe is not running late. She is right where she needs to be. What happened to Alexis Monroe is more than a courtroom scandal. It's a mirror held up to all of us. Many people go through life believing rules apply to everyone else, believing their time, their title, or their success gives them a pass. But the truth is simple. The moments that define us are often the ones where we're forced to face who we really are when no privilege can protect us. Respect isn't about power. It's about character. Humility isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And accountability isn't punishment. It's growth. If you've ever acted out of pride, or forgotten to treat someone with basic respect, or assumed you were too important for a rule, then Alexis's story is a reminder that we're all capable of change. Let me know in the comments, what did this story make you reflect on? And if you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.